Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give folks just a minute to join. Thanks for being here. All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Keegan McChesney, Senior Program Officer on LISC's National Rural Team. Our team works with and through over 150 partners that are transforming rural communities across the country, including some of the folks here with us today. Welcome to Raising the Roof. Through this webinar series, we seek to share innovations, trends, and best practices from our colleagues as we work together to create quality, affordable housing opportunities across America. All webinar attendees are muted. However, we welcome your thoughts, reactions, and questions, so please submit them via the chat and Q&A. We'll pose as many questions as we can to the speakers at the end of the session. So thank you all again so much for joining us. And Chris, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Holden. I'm a Program Officer in Affordable Housing with Rural LISC, and it's been my pleasure to work with each of our panelists in my time here at Rural LISC. We chose this topic because many rural communities have a large stock of older single-family homes, and also many have an aging populations looking to downsize in coming years. In the current economic environment, it's also harder than ever for low and moderate income households to purchase a new home. So we'd like to hear from these three community-based organizations with programs to purchase, rehabilitate, and resell homes to low-income buyers. These programs not only provide more economic security to the buyers, but they also help revitalize neighborhoods in rural communities. Although all three presenters will be talking about similar acquisition, rehab, resale programs, their programs differ somewhat in how they are implemented, and the organizations and programs differ also in size and their geographic reach. All three, though, run homeownership programs that have a substantial impact on the communities they serve. First, we'll be hearing from Annette Phillips, Indiana Community Development Director for Pathstone, a multi-state community development and service organization. Annette's been in the position for 24 years with housing counseling experience before that. She also holds an Indiana real estate sales license. After Annette, we'll be hearing from Connie Tomsky-Faville. Connie is Director of Housing Stability with CAP Services, Inc., a nonprofit organization in Wisconsin. Connie has been with CAP Services since 2023, and she brings 31 years of private sector business management experience to her work, including 12 years selling real estate and 8 years as executive director for 2 nonprofit arts organizations. We're going to round out our presentations with Chad Adams. Chad's the CEO of Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. The organization has a large, mostly rural service area covering most of the southwest corner of the state. I believe there's 30 or more counties in their service area. They're a nonprofit housing and community developer, as well as running homeownership programs and other services in their region. And with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Annette.
Thank you, Chris. So our mission at Pathstone is building self-sufficiency and improving communities. I wanted to share just a little bit in general about our organization and the services that we offer in Indiana. Next slide, please. We are a HUD-approved housing counseling organization. We provide not only housing counseling, but also homebuyer financial assistance to help first-time homebuyers that are low to moderate income to be able to purchase a home. We do a lot of homebuyer education. We're a NeighborWorks organization, and we do 8 hours of homebuyer education to help families that want to purchase a home understand the process. We also provide financial coaching. We have a partnership with our local United Way. The financial coaching is offered through what we call the Thrive Network. And it has been a really important piece of our homebuyer housing counseling in that it offers folks that are longer term, that will take more than a year to be able to purchase a home, the benefit of working with a financial coach to help get their credit scores up or decrease their debt, save money, so on and so forth. We also provide individual development accounts, which are special match accounts that families can use to help them purchase a home. Of course, we do affordable housing development, and we host a renter's book on our landing page, which is something we worked with Ball State University. And it has a lot of rental resource information for folks that are having tenant issues. Next slide, please. In terms of our affordable housing development, we've been doing development for approximately 17 years. Our affiliate Chodo that does the development is called Pathstone Housing Corporation of Indiana. We call it PACIN for short. We are a certified Chodo in both the city of Muncie and in Anderson. Our development experience includes single-family acquisition rehab sale projects, single-family new construction sale projects, as well as multifamily rental rehab. Some of the funding sources that we use for our affordable housing development include HUD funds through the HOME program, Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis Affordable Housing Program, HP. We've used LISC funding, NeighborWorks funding, and we've also received fundings from various foundations. So I wanted to just give an example of the two main activities that we do in terms of our affordable housing development, and just talk a little bit with you about how we acquired the properties, working with a GC partner, and our pipeline of home buyers and kind of the back end of the financing and all of that. So this particular home is our most recent Chodo project that we did in Muncie. It was a gut rehab. This picture doesn't really quite do it justice in terms of the before picture. So we'll go to the next slide. It had substantial fire damage and had been sitting vacant for years. It was on the tax sale. We work with, we're fortunate enough to have a land bank. So we work with Muncie Land Bank. So they acquired this property and signed a pass-through agreement with us for us to acquire it when we had all of our financing in place, because we never acquire a property until we have all of the grant funding contracts and all of that signed, and we're ready to go. You can advance to the next slide. This shows some more pictures of the interior of the home. And I would like to also share with you what the house looks like afterward. As you can see, you know, with the gut rehab, we do a lot of work, both interior and exterior. A lot of the homes that we acquire in the city are smaller homes. This home was probably less than 1,000, just a little under 1,000 square feet. No garage, but we put storage sheds on all the properties so families have a place to put their lawnmowers and all of that good stuff. If you advance, we can show some more of the after inside interior pictures of the property. In terms of, you can flip through all of those interior properties there. In terms of the buyers, being a HUD approved housing counseling organization, we kind of have our own pipeline of buyers. However, we also get buyers, of course, through working with other community groups that have folks that are interested in buying a home. we get referrals from realtors, from banks, and various other partners. But those are kind of the main places where we get our buyers. Both of the projects that I'm going to show here were done by the same GC. We've been fortunate to have, for the most part, just a few very dedicated, involved GCs who work with us. The GC that we have now, we really like because I think it's not just a matter of them being good at the work, but working with home funds, they have some extra work to do, and their willingness to do that. Also, they have to have a heart for the work that we do, and be willing to learn and kind of grow with us. So we kind of, I would say, when we establish a GC partnership, it's never it's never all that it could or should be at the beginning, right? But it takes some give and take on each end, both ours and the GC, because we're working typically with smaller contractors, and just helping them grow and understand our process. So if we go on to the next slide, this is an example of the new construction that we do. We've been doing new construction in Anderson, and this is one of our single family homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes. Again, these houses don't have any garages, but we put nice storage sheds up. We acquired this property, or the land. It had sort of evolved through a blight elimination program through the state, and the city had ownership of the property. And so the municipalities are good partners with us in terms of them being able to acquire and sit on a property until we're ready to build on it. And we always use realtors. We list our houses, and so that definitely, I didn't mention that before, but that's definitely, right, a pipeline for buyers who come to us through the house being listed on the MLS. And we can advance through those slides. The 2 houses that you see there are complete, and we're building a third that we just will be breaking ground soon right next to those. And our home sale prices are, they varied even between the time that we got this first one to the second house done. We always do a market study, so we kind of know on the back end what we're going to be selling houses for. And of course, we do the numbers to make sure that they're affordable to folks that are 80% or below of area median income. This house, I believe, sold for $147,000 or so, around that price mark. And the first house that you've seen, that was the gut rehab, sold for $79,900. So, we like to look at our market rents, and both the payments, of course, on the gut rehab as well as the new construction, were under the market rent for our area. And so that's another thing that we look at in terms of affordability. With the new construction, of course, there's not as many environmental things that we have to look for. HUD is now requiring radon testing, and so we're trying to kind of beef up our knowledge and understanding with that. But of course, with the rehabs, there's a lot more environmental hazard concerns. We've, of course, dealt with lead. We've done a couple of meth contaminated homes. We've also dealt with asbestos. And so Now we have, radon as well. So it's a quadruple threat. But all of the environmental hazards that we deal with, I guess the way we just kind of think about it is that, these things don't, as one of the folks that I work with says, these things don't defy science. And so it can be cleaned, it can be dealt with, and, the home can be safe to live in. I think that's it for me.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Annette. Next, I guess we'll be hearing from Connie Tomsky-Faville and hearing how their program runs in Wisconsin. Connie?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, Connie Tomsky-Faville with CAP Services in Stevens Point. We're right about in the center of the state of Wisconsin. I'm Director of Housing Stability there. I wanted to include this picture right away on the title slide. This is one of our projects. This particular gentleman was very proud of his home he was able to acquire through our Rehab and Resell program, and was delighted to be included in the presentation today, as well as he was featured in LISC's Portrait of Impact back in September of 2024. Next slide, please. So I realize there's a lot of data on this slide, but I wanted to talk about acquisition and how we acquire properties up here in central Wisconsin. This is a small program. We only serve 5 counties in central Wisconsin, but we have the housing crisis here just as much as is over the rest of the country. And so when we're acquiring properties, we are competing with all the other buyers who are also trying to acquire properties in about the same price range. We do have occasionally homes that would be donated to our program, but that's a little bit more rare. So on this slide, I just wanted to show the differences between the home that, one of the homes we purchased in 2022, shown there on the left, and the one that we purchased 2 years later for significantly more for the purchase, but even though the homes are very, very similar, similar in square footage, number of bedrooms and bathrooms. The one on the right has a 2-car attached garage instead of the 1 car shown on the left, but very, very similar. And to pay that much more only 2 years later, I think is extremely reflective of what's happening across the country. And also one of our really big challenges here in central Wisconsin as far as acquiring the properties. I wanted to note too, there in red, we do try to keep our homes, homes with 2-bedroom, 1 bath or thereabouts under the 160,000 mark. That is what's affordable for buyers in our area. Our CMI, our county median income in this particular county shown here is 59,400, I believe, for a household of 2. So we have to be under 160,000 when we go to put it back on the market for sale. You can go to the next slide. This is just kind of a timeline representing our process. Again, we have a small program, but it's been very successful over the 3 or 4 years that we have done it. We are usually about 2 or 3 months searching for properties and then going through the acquisition process, competing again with the open market, and then hopefully winning the property and having it approved by our board of directors, and then finally closing on it. We allow about a 2-month process for the bid, a 2-month time frame for the bidding process. We send out packages to 3 approved contractors. We do have a list of about 22 approved contractors, but as Annette was saying, it's more often that you have a group of 3, 4, 5 general contractors that you're working with all the time who are not only skilled, but also very dedicated to what you're trying to do. And that's our case as well. So we don't have, you know, a lot of bids coming through, but we are able to show those 3 bids at least to the board of directors and get their approval on one of them. And then we allow up to 6 months for the actual rehab. Generally, it only takes 4 to 5. The home on the right in the last slide that I showed you is that's only a couple months worth of rehab, and we're going to be listing that one at the end of this month. So rehab itself, we allow 6 months, and then we do put it back on the market for sale to low to moderate income buyers. And yes, thank you. So I thought I would just chart out some of the more common repairs that we see here in central Wisconsin. Roofing is huge around here. For some reason, we get hit by hail in central Wisconsin very, very often. So most often with our projects, it's roofing, windows, furnace, insulation, and you can read the list there. The environmental hazards that we come across are mold, lead-based paint, asbestos. Those are very common, but especially common here is mold issue. And then also on the left there, if you would do all of those repairs on a project, you're looking at about 75 to 85,000. As those are our central Wisconsin numbers. I can appreciate that they're higher elsewhere, but I thought that would be a helpful figure to put in this presentation. Obviously, you need to consider that when you're acquiring a property so that you can list it at an affordable price when you get the rehab done. The average age of the homes in our service area, it says 60 years old on this slide. That's outdated. Most of the homes we work on are at least 80 years old, and it's common to work on homes that are at least 100 years old. So homes that were built in the 1920s. Next slide. As far as buyers go, we require that our buyers complete the 8 hours of HUD home buyer counseling, and we do have a housing counseling program that just started here at CAP Services middle of last year, so it's pretty new, but I can talk a little bit more about that part later. We also require that the home be the primary residence of the new buyer, and that the buyer meets income eligibility. So they need to be under 120% CMI, county median income, if they're using bank financing or if they're cash buyers. If they're using down payment assistance through CAP's down payment assistance program, then we would require that they be 80% CMI or under. So as I said before, we do have a housing counseling program at CAP, and they work closely with the buyers, and then the rehab and resell program works with the property. So as I said, the rehab and resell program, they do outreach, of course, but then they also acquire the property, rehab the property, and then list it for sale. Meanwhile, our housing counseling program is working with buyers. They also do their own outreach, obviously, but they walk the clients through the whole process. And this is very similar to many organizations, but it's real new for us at CAP. They start at the beginning of the process. As I said, we require 8 hours of pre-purchase counseling. And so our housing counselors provide that, and then sign off on a certificate that the buyer can use for down payment assistance programs. Also, housing counseling does the income verification. And then if everything comes together, the buyer is able to make an offer on a property and go through the process and get to closing. And we actually insist that our housing counselors that have worked with those clients do attend the closing with the client. So they walk them through the process from beginning to end. If for some reason the purchase doesn't work out, then they still provide housing navigation and try to keep working with the client. Next slide. As far as funding, we do have a separate homeowner occupied rehab program as well that draws from several other different funding sources. But for our rehab and resell program, it is mostly the NSP program, which is a revolving loan fund that we use to pay our contractors. And then the LISC capacity building grant, especially right now, is very helpful. It was withdrawn for a brief period of time, but has been reinstated. And we do depend on that funding for sure for our staff. And I just wanted to include just a few before and after pictures. If you can go back to that slide. We did on this particular property, which was shown at the beginning of the presentation, mostly interior work, but we did replace all the windows and replace the furnace. And then we did a complete kitchen remodel and a bathroom remodel. And this is one of the homes that was built in the 1920s, even though the foundation in that picture looks much newer than 1920s. But it had the original hardwood floors, and we were able to restore those. We do like to restore the properties as much as possible, if we can, within budget. We were able to save all the hardwood floors, save the French doors and things like that. But we did have to move a couple of walls and expand that kitchen. Formerly, it was, basically about an 8 by 10 kitchen at that. And we expanded it to about 12 by 16 or so, maybe a little bit more. And so, this program, and like so many others that are similar to it, does so much for not only the individual families that end up acquiring these properties, but for the neighborhoods as well. And then the counties around these programs also benefit greatly. So we hope it continues for many, many years. You can go ahead to the next slide. Those are challenges and solutions. I understand we're going to be talking a lot about that after the other presentation is done. So I won't touch on those right now, but including a couple of more before and after pictures there. And you can go on to the next slide. And I think that's all I have. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Connie. For a newer program and a smaller program, you guys are having a tremendous impact, and I really love to see those improvements in the buildings. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love the French doors and the hardwood
yes,
floors.
yes. Thank you, Chris.
So you're welcome. Next, we'll be hearing from Chad Adams, Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. And Chad, your turn.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Christopher, for the introduction. The Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership is really kind of facilitating our acquisition rehab program through our wholly owned partnership community land trust. So that's kind of the intention of showing this slide, is that we're actually using that wholly owned subsidiary for our acquisition rehab program. Next slide. And just to kind of get a little bit more background about the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. So we do single family development, new construction, and acquisition rehab. We have a large multifamily portfolio of 68 apartment buildings representing over 2,000 units, and we do asset management on those. We have a real estate and community development department that is bringing more projects to the table on a regular basis. Mentioned that we have a community land trust. We do grant writing and technical services. We have a construction department and an architect on staff that I'll kind of illustrate a little bit further into the presentation how we're maximizing those. So bottom line is we serve a very wide 30 county area, and we provide a lot of different services in addition to just acquisition rehab. So next slide. So I want to give you a little bit of background on a community land trust. We could probably spend an hour or two just on what a community land trust is, how we're navigating it. And again, we're doing both new construction for our community land trust and ACT rehab, but for today, we're really going to focus on the ACT rehab and resale component. So our CLT is a separate LLC and private nonprofit organization. It's got a separate board of directors that really is representative of the population and interest in areas that we're serving throughout the region. Really, the intent here is to create affordable housing options by writing down the cost of the home and land from the home market purchase price. So just as one simple example of that, in Mankato, Minnesota, which is a 50,000 population community, we're seeing homes on the market being anywhere between $250,000 to $350,000. We might have to put $50,000 to $100,000 back into those homes to make them saleable again. So we essentially have a sales price at market base or total development cost, oftentimes between $350,000 and $400,000. Well, we're bringing a lot of leverage funding to the table to write that down to an affordable home buyer so that they can bring a mortgage and other down payment assistance to the table at between maybe it's $180,000 to $220,000. So, and then we control the land on the property throughout the next 99 years. And that home buyer, when they sell, essentially has to sell it to another home buyer at or below 80% of area median income. So that's kind of how community land trust work. And again, we're offering these to sale for people who could not traditionally or otherwise afford quality home ownership, and it creates permanent affordability by controlling the resale price through a predetermined resale formula. One specific on that is that the home buyers are able to generate about 25% of the equity that grows on that property, in addition to any principal payments that they're paying off on their mortgage. So that's a little bit of background about a community land trust. Next slide. So acquiring properties through our land trust, we built a lot of relationships with local realtors, but I would say also just other developers or landowners that we generally know. But for the most part, we're just buying those on the open market. So oftentimes they're located in distressed census tracts, just kind of based on our mission and where we are doing work. But that's also sometimes a requirement of the funding that we're bringing to the table, whether that's a federal government program or some state government programs or new market tax credits, which I've included down below. And we've got a construction department, as noted before, and a real estate development department. So they're kind of oftentimes working together, looking at properties out on the market, touring and assessing those, and if we need to, make an offer on the property. And I should note that we're kind of growing in this space. It hasn't been a large line of business for us traditionally, but we are really growing our community land trust very quickly. So we're getting very exposed and familiar with kind of, I would say, getting to the economies of scale to make it work for our organization. Mentioned earlier too that we've got an architect on staff, and they, along with construction, provide some of that work scope and feasibility. So we've got professionals on staff, and we don't have to go out and farm that out to other organizations. Relationships also are built with local contractors to get estimates. In the Mankato area, we probably got close to a handful. Sometimes we have a little bit more challenges than some of our smaller rural areas of the community throughout our region. I can speak to that a little bit later. In terms of financing the acquisitions, we have an existing 2 lines of credit that we use to acquire properties, hold those, make the improvements and resale. We also have some partnerships with a lot of local entities. So we're utilizing community development block grant funds, housing trust fund grants, banks, and new market tax credits, which we just were awarded here recently. So those are some methods for financing those improvements. Next slide. Rehabbing the properties, again, our construction department, we are not general contractors. So we actually go out and hire the general contractors and oversee all the project work. We've got a lot of experience with that. And again, with those relationships with local general contractors, it's been very beneficial for us. We do hire consultants and firms from time to time as need be to specialize in the environmental health hazard assessment and mitigation. But again, with our team of individuals, we've got 5 full-time members in our construction division. So they've got a lot of experience in identifying what some of those environmental and health hazards might be up front. So it really kind of helps us in terms of avoiding potential cost hazards down the road. In terms of most common upgrades that we're seeing, windows, floor and tiling, similar to what we saw earlier with our Wisconsin neighbors. Radon has continued to be an issue, and we've got staff that are able to help provide the testing, essentially set up a mitigation program as well too. Shingles and siding with kind of the winds and the hail and the rains that we're getting in here in Minnesota as well too. That's been increasing. as well as landscaping around homes. We've found quite a bit with aging homes that the areas around the foundation are sinking, and oftentimes the water is running back into the basements. And with the increase of rains and the volume of water coming these last number of years, that's been a bigger issue. So it's not a lot of times that you're able to really see that through an eye test. So we've got some experience in being able to identify those when we're out on site. And again, in terms of financing the rehab component, we're again using our lines of credit and some of those other sources of fund that we offer acquisition as well. Next slide. In regards to finding home buyers in mortgage financing, similar to the other two organizations, we do have a homeownership department, and we've been very successful in reaching out to all of our communities and also holding virtual sessions to ensure that qualified buyers are going through the proper training, the required courses that were identified earlier as well too. We do some unique community engagement and outreach where we just go out to various different fairs. Sometimes we're very intentional about locations or other community events that we're tying that to. We've held educational and informational sessions on the community land trust model and what we're doing with realtors and bankers. I will note it's been challenging to get realtors and bankers going with a community land trust model, but once we have gotten there and we've shown some success, it's starting to replicate and grow. And then just outreach to our tenants because we own 68 apartments and we have over 2,000 units. We, from time to time, will reach out to our tenants and communities, particularly in Mankato, for trying to build a pipeline from rental into home ownership. Our target base is 60 to 80% of area median household income served, and that's the state statistic that we're using for that. We've also been very intentional about working in Mankato, Minnesota, Worthington, Minnesota, where there's a larger share and percentage of BIPOC families. If you're not aware, in Minnesota, we've got one of the worst home ownership rates for Black individuals and families. So we've been intentional about working in communities that meet a mission to change those numbers historically. Bank mortgages, products through Minnesota Housing, USDA Rural Development are the type of product that home buyers are bringing to the table at closing, along with some down payment assistance programs through the state of Minnesota. In Minnesota 2 years ago, the legislature approved about $1 billion in just total housing investment across the spectrum. About $150 million of that was set up through some new down payment assistance programs where home buyers can get up to about 10% or a max of $30,000 per home through that program. So, and those funds opened up probably about a year ago or more and are starting to get close to being depleted. It's been that popular. In addition to that, we're getting other write-down gap funds for that purchase price to the homeowner through the cities, the counties, community donations, private foundation grants, new market tax credits, employers. Should also note here as well too that we've also used the Rural LISC capacity building grant to help build up our staff capacity for these programs, and we're regularly using NeighborWorks America dollars or supplemental funds and grants, whether it's for operating capacity or for capital that we're bringing to the table. So, big message here is that we're layering several sources of funds that we're bringing to the table for write-down gap assistance. I think that's it for my presentation.
Fantastic. You all have such different yet similar programs. It's been great to hear everything you guys have to say. But no program like this, no affordable housing ever comes easy. And I think it's good for our listeners to hear about some of the challenges that each of you have faced and maybe a little bit about what you've done to try to address those challenges. Connie, how about you start with some of the challenges you've had with CAP services programs and serving your clients?
Sure. So I mentioned a little bit in my presentation already about acquiring properties and how competitive the market is. We've looked into some other things, and I'm sure this isn't new for most of the people on this call, but we've explored sheriff sales or sheriff auctions. We do use a buyer's agent most of the time. And then the whole idea of having cash ready when you're making an offer, I think is huge, or at least proof of cash funds. Regarding the buyer's agent, I don't know if people are real familiar with this. Obviously, a concept that I was familiar with as a realtor, but there's pros and cons with the buyer's agent. Most of the time, they do have more of their finger on the pulse of the market and things that might be coming on the market, or someone who might be considering donating a property. They do charge a commission, but I think some people are unaware that actually you can negotiate to have the seller of the property pay the buyer's agent commission. In fact, when I used to sell real estate, most of the time the seller was paying the buyer's agent commission. And you can see how they would want to do that. If they like this offer, they're going to want it to go through. And so they many times will acquiesce and pay the buyer agent's fee. The cons with sheriff sales, really obvious. You usually aren't allowed to see the interior of the property. So you really have no idea what rehab costs you're looking at, and that's extremely risky because so much of our decisions depend on how much we're going to have to put into that house. Although sheriff sales always bring the lowest asking price, the houses they're trying to sell will have really low prices, but there's a risk for that. A second challenge we have, which I was excited to hear about Chad's solution, I think, on the contractors shortage, is to have your own construction department. That would help a little bit for sure. We have a severe lack of contractors here. It's really bad. We attribute it to, the young people these days aren't going into the trades as much as they used to. So there are fewer contractors out there, and the ones that are out there are swamped. They're so busy. So it's just hard to, get contractors to bid on your projects. We've thought about some way to incentivize them, perhaps cover their lead certification fees or something like that. This is a nut we have to crack, and we've really been struggling with that. Just the last challenge of overall funding, and always to increase those funding sources, especially for capacity. So didn't mean to ramble on and on, but those are those are the ones that we face every day.
Well, those are certainly big challenges. And you've also told us about how you get around some of them too. So that's good. Chad, how about your key challenges, your program?
Yeah, I think one of the things has been, in Mankato again, which is about 50,000 population, is the market is really hot. So trying to acquire a home that becomes available is really hard. So we've become much more educated and prepared to jump in where we need to be. We initially started out with kind of a home buyer initiated process where they would be qualified home buyers and they would go out and select the homes. That really hasn't worked out very well, just because they're at a little bit of a disadvantage to get an offering on the home, and the time to close is a little bit longer than a traditional process. So we've kind of shifted back to us working with local realtors. We've got a licensed realtor in our real estate department division, so she's aware of the market and is out there actively searching for properties. And I have to say, just through word of mouth as well too. There's a lot of people who want to work with us because it's a mission-based organization, and we're serving a population that's been traditionally underserved. So we've been continuing to build connections and growing from that, particularly in the Mankato area. I would also say on the rehab side, not as much in Mankato, but definitely throughout the rest of our region, we're having a really hard time finding contractors. So oftentimes what we try to do is we try to start local within, that community, then we spread that out to, maybe a 20, 30-mile radius. And if we have to, we'll go out to a 60-mile radius where we know that we've got some contractors that will work. But the biggest thing for them oftentimes is volume. If it's one home at a time, we have a little bit difficult time getting commitments. So we might be doing 2 or 3 rehab programs, maybe a month or two apart. So it kind of keeps them busy. That's really helpful from a new construction standpoint when we're doing 2 to 4 units at a time. So we're kind of really locking them into the work, and it's keeping them active and committed on the work. So And we recognize as well too that some of the funding that we bring to the table has some restrictions on it, and some contractors just are very profitable in the work that they're doing, and they don't have time to do other additional administrative work. So we're trying to bring them along as best we can to keep them engaged, and it's been pretty successful so far. I think the last thing, with finding home buyers and mortgages, in a new community, it was hard to really sell the community land trust model, but we've shown some really good success through our first few acquisition rehab homes and through the new construction where realtors and bankers are now paying more attention. We're very fortunate that the city of Mankato put in the first large amount of write down gap funds because, again, we didn't have anything basically secured. We hadn't applied for any grants yet. So we leveraged that to go after Minnesota housing funds, other private foundation funds. We had a community fundraiser. So again, we're stacking a number of different options. And based on all those, we just got our first new market tax credit award for homes in Mankato. And that'll be a combination of new construction and acquisition rehab homes that'll be kicking off here this summer. There'll be 20 that we need to complete in the next 18 months.
Wow. Well, that's going to be quite a challenge, but it sounds like you guys are going to be up for it. And finally, Annette, what kind of challenges are you guys facing with your program in Indiana?
We are having some of the same challenges that have been mentioned. The high cost of construction. Every time I open up a scope with a cost estimate, it's kind of like, and I'm trying to brace myself, and my contractor is saying, "Are you sitting down?" So, and it is, it costs what it costs. And there was a question in the chat I've seen about whether or not we bid out for GCs. We do, but it's very hard if you have an established relationship in terms of more than just asking for folks to say, how much will you build this for? We kind of do our process based on qualification. And so we're looking for, a GC that has experience, has worked with some of the funding sources that we work with, can demonstrate that they have the ability to cash flow the project, because with home, it's reimbursement only. And so ours is more of a, request for qualification type thing. And once we have a really good contractor who has a lot of experience, sometimes it's hard to get other contractors in there. But we never want to put all our eggs in one basket either. So, but yes, we do bid out, to our GCs, and that keeps them kind of on their toes, right? That they don't get content and feel like they can just charge us anything. But all of our costs that come back are extremely high. And even working with funders, sometimes they're like, it costs too much to build new construction. And so they want to look at doing rehab. And that was another question that was in the chat. My GC contract for the gut rehab that had the fire damage was, I think, $145,000. To build the new construction that you've seen was $311,000 or so. So it's still cheaper to do the gut rehab, and we try to be sensitive to that, not just doing a lot of demolition, and trying to keep some of the characteristics of the neighborhood as it is. And so there's some value in that. And but for funders to think that we can just kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat in terms of low construction costs, that's one of our challenges, because we just can't do it. Acquiring homes, that was talked about. The rehab that you've seen, we got from the Muncie Land Bank, and they charged us what their cost was. They did some title cleanup, and title can be problematic too sometimes. But we paid $8,000, I think, for that property. So very cheap. In another municipality that we're working where there is no land bank, I'm going to probably pay, I'm imagining $30,000-$40,000 for the same house. So, and it's going to be difficult for me to get and have site control. So those are definitely challenges for us. The high home value on the back end, one of the things I like about doing the rehabs is, like I said, we sold that for $79,900, much less expensive. Now, it was a smaller 2-bedroom home versus the new construction being 3-bedroom and having 2 bath. But it is like that house wasn't listed for maybe a week or so before we had an offer. I worry about the higher cost homes having families, even though on paper it should work that they would qualify. But we do have a lot of families that have, higher debt and don't have the credit scores. So it's difficult sometimes to find, to get the buyers that want to buy that particular home in the neighborhood where we're building. And we're always pretty much building in neighborhoods that need revitalization. So our surroundings are a challenge sometimes, right? We know that we're working to bring the neighborhood up, but sometimes we're the first one in and everything around it doesn't look too appealing. And so we kind of battle that issue most of the time when we're looking at and deciding where we want to do a home for sale. Also finding and maintaining inspectors for to do the new Inspire inspection. It's difficult sometimes because regular normal inspectors maybe are not familiar with what we need for the HUD guidelines. And, sometimes the municipality will get somebody for us to do that. And then, there's turnover. So that's been a little bit of a struggle for us. But again, some of the solutions, if you can find a land bank partner, somebody that can hold the property, if the municipality is willing to hold the property, needing more down payment assistance. It's great to hear about some of the increased amounts that folks can get in other places. Where we're at is limited to $7,500 unless we have some other partnering home buyer assistance program, like maybe the Federal Home Loan Bank or something that we can pair with it. So that has been a challenge. We have our individual development accounts through the state, but we also have developed some special individual development accounts that help us with helping buyers who maybe they are trying to pay off collections, and sometimes that can just seem insurmountable, right? But we have match money from a foundation that we can give them if they do money management education, if they do their home buyer education. We work with them to pay off some collection debt. And that has been something that throughout my career, like there's not been very much help where families can get help with that. And so we were excited to create that program with the help of our local foundation and some other funding partners to address that issue.
I was going to say you and our other presenters have definitely provided a lot of different approaches to the financing and cost issues. with CLTs, IDAs, various sources for more standard down payment assistance. We've got just a few minutes left, and I think Keegan's been tracking our questions coming in from our participants. Keegan, we got a couple of questions that seem to crop up with some frequency.
Yes, and Annette did a great job of covering a few of them. One
Oh,
question
great,
for
preemptive.
Annette and Connie is about if you're not utilizing a CLT model, are you using any resale formulas, or are you just having income restrictions for the buyers and then they own the house outright?
Yeah, I can actually speak to that really quickly. We just started a CLT last year is when it actually got going. And, we have a realtor on the board, and we have a lot of community people on the board. We have a lot of nonprofit participants on the board. The idea is that I think there's 7 or 8 CLTs in Wisconsin now, and we look up to Minnesota because they are the model in the Midwest as far as successful CLTs go. Excuse me. The idea here with our rehab and resell program is that we can rehab properties and sell them into the CLT. And if we can get the CLT going where we want to, I serve it on the board there. If we can get it where we want it, there will be a ready supply of homes to go into the CLT. And there is a huge need for a CLT in our area. Lots of buyers can take advantage of this. And if I had 20 more minutes of Chad's time, I would drill him on his resale formula to see what a little bit more about what they're doing there. But I wanted to answer that quick for our folks here.
That's great. Thank you. And maybe with the last few minutes, this last question, does anyone have any luck getting foreclosed units donated from banks or federal lenders like USDA or VA?
Not yet. We have not had any success there. We've had one private donor donate their home to us, but nothing through the foreclosure or I would say the forfeiture process at the local level either.
We've had some success with that early on. I think more banks are using other companies to handle those properties now. And so recently we have not. But at least 2 of the rehabs that we've done in Muncie as Choto projects were homes that had been foreclosed on, and the bank sold them to me for like $10,000. So.
All right. Are there any other prominent questions in our last 2 minutes, Keegan?
Maybe just price increases generally, and an interesting question around how maybe you assess a home and how much it's going to cost to rehab, how you get an initial sense of that in this uncertain environment, how you make those decisions.
Good question.
I'll just jump in quick. I think it's important whenever you're assessing a home to just automatically add a 20% charge at the very end for surprises, because anyone who's ever worked in rehab of any kind, even your own home, there are always major surprises. And really, you can't identify those surprises unless you've been in the field for a very, very long time and know what kinds of things will tip you off to a surprise. Just a real quick example, we have one that caught us completely off guard. We were doing rehab on a very small 2-bedroom, 1-bath, kind of a straightforward rehab. We decided to take the back porch off and put an addition on. In the process of excavating the back porch, we soon realized within about 20 minutes of the backhoe going that the foundation in the southwest corner was completely missing. So this was an old home built 100 years ago, and they used a shale rock foundation. The shale had shifted over the years, and it's a high water area. And so one corner of the foundation had completely washed away. This is something we could not see with the visual inspection at all. It was something that was only discoverable by doing actual excavation. So even if you've had a number of years in this business, or as in my case, I sold real estate for a number of years, you think you know what you might be looking for, there will always be a surprise. And if you can just like tack on maybe 20% to help you cover that, I think that's just a little tip I might pass along.
That's great.
All right.
Yeah, and with that, I think we're at time. So I just want to thank all the speakers so much. Thank you, Chris, for organizing. Thank everyone for attending. The webinar has been recorded. It will be posted to LISC's YouTube page, and we will share the deck with everyone as well. And if you have ideas for a future webinar topic about rural housing, please email myself or Chris. I put our emails in the chat. So thank you all again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all the presenters, and thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you.